Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm down for a nice little informal podcast today. What do you say? I don't know if we'll do two segments or just keep it with one today. I want to, I want to start out with just a word of, or several words of appreciation. Okay, appreciation for all of you, and I think this all the time, right? I mean, I say to you all the time how much I appreciate you and how grateful I am to have you out there listening to me. Because honestly, as I say to the people in my workshops on Saturday mornings, really just the computer's in front of me, right? I could be talking to the wall behind you right now just as easily, right? But there is something really special to have people who are listening to me, right? But even and the comments and the feedback that I get from all of you is nothing short of inspirational and motivational and just absolutely heartwarming. Okay, and that's the truth. But there's something that's even more that I'm appreciating even more today, right? Because as you know, or I think I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before. I do videos on TikTok these days, okay? And I just actually passed my 1,000 followers mark, and so I'm going to start like very soon. Just another thing on the list now. I'm gonna start. Not I have to, but I'm looking forward to doing some like guided meditations and maybe a mindfulness Q&A kind of thing, help people to understand this work a little bit more and help them to get started in some practices, right? And then of course be there to support them in the capacity of a coach if they so choose to engage in that, or if they feel they need it, et cetera, right? But here's the thing. TikTok is, as it's a balancing act for me because I try not to watch too much, because it can suck you in, these little videos. Ooh, my, oh my. And that's the thing. They're so succinct, right? And it really does take a level of, I think any of the people who do longer form, like in TikTok, you have three different options. You can do a 15-second video, you can do a 60-second video, or you can do a 3-minute video. All right. And I think that the people who can pull off the 2 to 3 minute video are people who are telling a story that's very engaging. Right. And that's not always me, as you know, right? A lot of times I'm just out here just riffing, I'm just kind of, hit record and go, right? And so I actually got a comment the other day, and I'm going to do a reply to this, I think. And that's one of the beautiful things about TikTok is people leave comments on your videos, and then you can reply to their comment with another video, right? So you hit like a video camera record button there, and then the video shows their comment with your video. So it's really, really pretty cool. I like that part of it, and I love, responding to people because it's like another again, another chance to riff and just, hit record and go, right? And there are a few videos I've done in which, like I did one the other day where I told the Jack Cornfield story about the teacher who she had the classmates, like write something positive about each of their classmates, and then she consolidated each of those lists for each person. So you got a list of 30 things that your classmates said kind about you, and then one of the students was tragically killed in military conflict, and at the funeral, you see, I'm telling the story in no time at all, but it's not doing it justice. But at the funeral, the teacher was invited to the funeral, and the mother gave the teacher this piece of paper that turned out to be that piece of paper from his class a few years earlier, and that was like the only thing on his body, and the several other kids who were at the funeral also, like, they all had their lists like right in their purses and in their wallets, and mine's in my car kind of thing, and just illustrates the power of kindness, So anyway, I'm going to start crying just even thinking about this story. That's not the point right now. but the story itself is so compelling. Like, first of all, to tell it, I had to squeeze it into 3 minutes, right? And I had to try like 3 times to tell it without crying, and I never really did. I was still crying at the end, but managed to get through it, kind of thing. But that's a really compelling story, right? Like I just breezed through it, didn't give it credit. But if you tell that story intentionally with the passion that it deserves, well, nobody's going to scroll away from that, right? But if I'm just kind of typically talking about my, compassion, for instance, as I just tried to do like 6 or 7 takes just now, it's like I can't do it it's not that compelling, and so so of course I have access to analytics that show me that, people are only, hanging out for, maybe 30 seconds of a 3-minute video or 2-minute video. So that's not a good sign, and so it's okay, right? Like I'm fine with that. And that's the thing, like the self-compassion that I have for myself, right, shows me that well, first of all, I'm used to doing this, right? I've been doing this every day for 3 years now, right? Or actually almost 4 years, I think. And between this and my workshops that last for 90 to 120 minutes and my client meetings that are 45 minutes of mostly me talking, right? Like I'm very accustomed to this sort of long form, flowing, meandering kind of thing. And this is where the appreciation comes in, right? Because if I didn't have this, it'd be so hard for me to do the TikTok things. So I'm just so grateful that I have this outlet that I can sit here and just, it's almost like I feel like I'm just sitting here having a cup of tea with you all. Like you're just sitting here in my office here, in my little basement office, and we got the candle going, and it's comfortable in here, and it's I've got a humidifier, I've got a heater if it gets cold, and I can make you a cup of tea, and and that's the feeling that it has. And so I just want to tell you how much I love that feeling. All right. So last night, actually, something really fascinating happened on TikTok. And again, it's this, before I tell you the story, okay, just like I told you, I was criticized in another video. I never got to tell you the comment, but this person said, I don't know what it is, but there's something about your delivery you got to work on. Like, okay. That's slightly less than helpful, but let me work on it. Let me try. But the thing is that, in the past, I would have been really, really upset to hear something like that. I would have been to the point of like I would have written back like, oh yeah, well, what about all my podcast followers, and what about my YouTube and my 3,000 people on my mailing list, I would have been trying to prove her wrong. And so, and the thing is though, that it's the energy that makes me want to prove her wrong that's not good for me, right? That's unhealthy for me. Not only is it unhealthy because it causes stress, but in the process of causing stress, it moves me away from the ability to connect to other people in my life. As Dr. Stephen Porges calls it, he calls it the social engagement mode of our nervous system, which is basically what he's calling our self-regulation. Right? That when we are regulated, when we are not in hyperarousal or hypoarousal, and we are, regulated and open to what is arising in the present moment, that is where we're able to actually connect to people. Right? And so if we're getting upset and we're getting defensive and we're getting, critical and we're getting contemptuous towards others, right? And we become dehumanizing towards others, and we dehumanize others is what I mean to say. When we do all that, right? Yes, it's making them suffer to some degree, sometimes, maybe, but what it's really doing is it's making you suffer. And it's not only making you suffer, again, not just in the sense of the stress not being good for you, but you're also eliminating your ability to connect to other people. As you know, this is the Showing Up to Life podcast, right? And what do we do in our lives? I mean, gotta be something like 95% of our waking time is spent in the connection to other people. right? You work with other people. You go to school with other people. You have, if you might live alone, I don't know, but if you have a family, you eat every meal with other people. You are constantly bumping into other people in your home if you live with a family. But even if you live alone, like, yes, you have some time that's alone, but not much. You go to the store and you deal with other people. You jump in a taxi cab, you deal with another person. You go on the subway, you're constantly negotiating other people's space and timing and their emotions, right? And so it's a question of you walking through all this in this little, separate or delusionally separate, entity, or if you want to connect. Right now, not only is connecting synonymous with showing up, but more importantly, when we connect to others, and this is something I covered last week in my workshop, when we're connecting to others, not only are our gestures and our facial expressions mirroring each other, which helps us to feel safe, which further, builds regulatory powers over our autonomic nervous system, but even our heart rates are syncing up with each other. Our brain neurons are firing with each other. And in this process, as my brain neurons are firing with your brain neurons, and my heart rate and my vagus nerve are syncing up and harmonizing with yours, what we're doing is we're making each other healthier. Like, it's literally adding to our health. It's a net positive gain. So it's not something that we're talking about like woo-woo connection and be a hippie and stuff like that. We're talking even at the level of hard-nosed neuroscience shows us that the importance of connection is one of the most important things that we have. In fact, it's a biological imperative, as Stephen Porges also tells us in the Polyvagal Theory. Now, by the way, a word about the Polyvagal Theory. I think I've told you all this before. The Polyvagal Theory is actually the name of a book, okay? But it is a notoriously difficult book, okay? Stephen Porges, you got to watch a video with the guy, Porges. He's fantastic. He's just awesome. But he is like in his own, he's like the if you close your eyes and you picture a mad scientist, you're getting an idea of the type of person Stephen Porges is. And I say that in the most massively complimentary and loving way, okay? Because he's my kind of guy. Like, I would, like they say, like, if you could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, Stephen Porges is in my top 5, no question about it, But because he's so, so brilliant, he wrote a book that was really hard for people to read. So actually, I think it might actually be out of print, this book, and it's like less than 10 years old, because it just, like you can find a copy for like $50 or something, and so thankfully, Dr. Porges recognized this and acknowledged it without judgment of himself and others. And what they did was he got together with another organization, and they did an interview, or a series of interviews. And what they did was they transcribed those interviews into another book that they call the Handbook to the Polyvagal Theory. Buy that one. Not only is it much easier to read, it's very, very enjoyable, but it's also, jammed with information. Like serious information, like amazing book. So anyway, back to what we're talking about here, right? So I got these, that comment the other day, that my delivery needs help somehow. Now, again, in the past, that would have created, a reaction from me that would have been a negative emotion. Right now, as we always talk about here, negative emotion doesn't mean bad emotion, right? But what it means is a negative emotion that's meant to cause an uncomfortable position, a feeling in my body. That's what we call the affect of the emotion, right? How it makes you feel. And a negative emotion is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. It's not a coincidence, right? So when you feel the feeling of the emotion of anger, for instance, is going to represent in your body as pain, essentially, right? And likewise, the emotion of happiness or joy is going to, it's going to manifest as a feeling of like, like you just took a drug or something. It's going to feel really, yeah, good, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that, yeah, positive emotions feel better. They do. And that's by design. And so as we talk about here on this podcast, it's never about avoiding the negative, right? It's about feeling the negative, understanding the negative, allowing those negative emotions to process through you, and then coming back to your regulation. Right? When we talk about self-regulation, we're not suggesting that you set your regulation and then you stay there forever, never veering out. That's impossible. You literally cannot live. And if you did, you're doing something very, very unhealthy. So, perhaps in a coma kind of thing, right? So it's just not possible even to address life in that sense. Right? To think of never falling out of your regulation, never experiencing negative emotions. Trying to do otherwise, you're setting yourself up not only for failure, but probably for significant suffering. And so again, what it is how do I get back to my regulation, to my social engagement mode of my nervous system so that I can reconnect to my world around me? Right? So what it is when somebody leaves a comment like that, right? Well, there's two things at play, right? It's a combination of empathy and compassion, right? Because the first thing that we do is we look at, okay, what's going on with this person, right? Not like identifying and absorbing ourselves in this comment and feeling like, oh gosh, I'm such a bad person. Like I might as well stop doing my videos. This is horrible. Nobody loves me, right? But instead saying, okay, where's this comment coming from? Is it potential that this person is in a place of suffering? Like what makes somebody, what motivates somebody to leave a comment like that on social media? Is that coming from a healthy and wise mind and heart? Or is that coming from a mind and a heart that are probably dysregulated on their own and probably not feeling so great right now in this moment? And so what's my appropriate response right now? I mean, the thing is, in our non-dualistic view, it's all true, right? Like I could easily see it as, well, I should, push back and say, hey, screw you. Look at all my followers. You're out of line. They're wrong. And that would be justified. But also justified is me saying, wow, okay. Well, thanks for pointing that out. Let me know if anything specific comes to mind. Now, the energy but behind each response is the thing that matters, right? It's not the response itself, right? Because I could type whatever I want to type, right? Like I could be seething and still type, yeah, thank you for your your suggestion. Let me know if anything else comes up, right? Like that could easily be conveyed even through the gritting teeth of my anger, right? And so it's the energy that motivates our response that matters, right? And so that energy can either be, again, one of defensiveness, one of contempt, one of criticism, one of fear, right? Resentment, okay? Or the response, the energy that motivates the response could be one of caring and kindness and empathy and compassion. So a reminder that compassion is just the simple act of standing with someone suffering when you notice it. That's all it is. It's very simple. It's not, I mean, it's complex just like everything else in life, of course, but it's a very simple concept, compassion. It's when you see suffering, instead of turning away from that suffering and figuring, oh, that's his problem, you turn towards the suffering. You say, can I help? Even if helping is just noticing the suffering. Sometimes that's all we can do. Sometimes we can do more. Sometimes we can reply in a way that reassures somebody that it's okay you made this, crappy little comment. It's okay. I'm not going to, blast you out to the rest of the world and try to, make you look bad for this comment. That's what some people do on TikTok, And that's the power that I have to do, of course. I could get on there and say, I could show graphics of, like, oh, there's my 3,000 followers, there's my 200, I could do that kind of thing. If you've ever watched TikTok, you know what I mean. But I don't have to do that. I could and I will do a reply to that video that is compassionate. I wrote out a reply, but I plan to maybe make a reply to talk about this, right? Because the question is, what is that energy doing to me? Is that energy, bringing me towards my regulation, or is it bringing me away from my regulation? And as I explained already, negative emotions bring you away from regulation by design. That's what they're supposed to do. The negative emotions you feel are just supposed to guide you back to safety. That's all they're trying to do. And to get you to remember this next time so that you don't get into this situation again. That's what your amygdala and your hippocampus are doing all day long. Everything that you associate a negative emotion with, they are encoding, and those parts of your brain are creating a roadmap of your life, saying no, don't do that stuff because that's scary. Last time we got scared at that, and so that's where we start to get confused, right? If we're starting to constantly live in this place of contempt and criticism and dehumanization, then we're constantly going to be in that place of, everything that your brain is remembering, it's associating with something negative. And therefore, even things like love feel negative. And that's where you get into all kinds of confusion. And the only thing that seems to make sense is to just drink another bottle of whiskey. And I can tell you that from experience. And so the idea, the only thing that we ever have to do in our whole lives, the only thing, and everything else follows from here, is to come back to regulation, to build the skills to be able to self-regulate. And the first step in self-regulation is self-awareness. And this thanks to Daniel Goleman, who talks about this in his amazing book, Emotional Intelligence. Right? Because that's what emotional intelligence is. It's the awareness and the regulation of our own emotions. It's the empathy of another person's emotions. It's the ability to harness the motivation and understand the motivation of our emotions. And then it is social skills. That's a weird connection. Social engagement, social skills. Sounds like there's something there. I love watching doctors agree with each other. Something that's not such a given these days, by the way. But anyway, that's not what this podcast is about. So anyway, this is all, I hope that you all are finding this to be helpful. And ultimately, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is, it's good information, full stop, just in and of itself, right? But one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this particular specific practice or this specific topic is because tomorrow I'm doing a workshop. And the workshop I'm doing is on compassion and self-compassion, right? And really, that's the key here, right? I mean, that's one key here, right? Is that, when I can look at life, as I said earlier, right? When I can look at everything that's happening around me and I can recognize that, that even the people in the grocery store and the people in the car next to me and the people at the, the post office and the bakery or the bagel shop, wherever I find myself at work, in calls and wherever I find myself, if I walk around knowing and acknowledging that everyone around me suffers at some point. They might not be suffering right this second, but they suffer sometimes. It won't be long before they suffer again. And when we walk around with this acknowledgement that the world is that everybody is subject to suffering at some time, it helps us to carry ourselves and to lead ourselves with this kindness and compassion. And once we do that, again, for ourselves also, that's when things really start to change. Sorry, just looking at my microphone, making sure it was on. I saw this weird, didn't look like the light was on for a second, but it is. So compassion and kindness are like right there with each other, right? And the way I like to look at it, and I think I've told you this before, is that when we practice kindness, right, when we just walk around just with the idea that as I explained the other day, the word metta, from which loving kindness comes, it means gentle friend, right? So somebody who's just gentle to everything, just like a gentle rain, and a friend through everything, a friend in the high times and the low times, right? Then when we can approach our lives like this, that becomes like the sort of energetic field in which we are existing, right? And from that energetic field of loving kindness for the whole world around us, it makes it much more ready for us to notice the suffering. And as soon as we notice the suffering, it's like we're, boom, ready to just consolidate and condense that kindness into the compassion, the effort, the intention to relieve someone's suffering. Again, even if all you can do is say, hey, I see your suffering. Now, the beautiful, amazing, absolutely mind-blowing, amazing thing, so this can be practiced in such simple ways. I mean, you're talking about just, if you can do 10 minutes a day, yes, that's ideal. 15, 20 maybe is more ideal, but 10 is certainly that window of 10 to 20 minutes is the ideal sweet spot, But if you don't have that much time, I can show you how to do this informally, okay? And so, and the beautiful thing is that loving kindness and compassion is the exact same practices, which my workshop is going to discover tomorrow. And the only difference is you're just looking for the suffering, as opposed to the sympathetic joy, right? Which is noticing somebody's happiness and standing with that. And so we're going to talk about all this. We're going to talk about the science of compassion. We're going to talk about how when they do a brain scan of somebody who is contemplating compassion, that all the activity is in the left frontal lobe of their brain. The left frontal lobe being the place that is associated with positive emotions and happy feelings and wellness and satisfaction. Also with resilience and regulation and all that other good stuff too. But literally, people who are contemplating compassion, which is ironic, right? They're contemplating on the suffering of others, and yet they're happier. And I'm going to tell you about the person who was named by Richie Davidson the happiest man in the world. I'm going to tell you all about his story too. So if that's not enough to get you to show up tomorrow, I don't know what more I can do. It's free. It's at 11:30 a.m. my time, which is the mountain time in Colorado in the USA. It's 2 hours behind Eastern time, 1 hour ahead of Pacific, and 1 hour behind Central. So I hope you can make it. I really do. It's going to be fun. We've got a great group. I have a solid core of about 10 people who show up week to week. We've done 4 of them already, and they've shown up to each of them, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's great connection. I even see people like there was one point where I can see when somebody's doing something on their computer, on the Zoom screen, and I was like, oh, it looks like this person is typing a question. Let me pause and make sure I'm answering the question. And she unmuted herself. Oh, no, I was just sending a message to that person over there. So they're like communicating even without me. And I love that. It's amazing. That's community. And community is where compassion lives. And it's where kindness lives. And community is where the well-being of the individual and of the whole comes together. So why don't you join our community and check it out, all right? It won't cost you more than your time. All right, everybody. I hope you can make it. And if you can't, I understand, of course. And either way, I hope to be back. Saturdays and Sundays these days are a little tough for me to record content, but I'm going to try. All right. So hopefully you'll see me before next week. But if not, I'll see you soon. Okay. Take care, everybody. Wishing you well. Thanks for a nice informal episode today. Take care.